Welcome, everybody. I'm Nancy Vandell, Chair of the NCAC Bylaws Subcommittee, and I call the meeting to order at 9:01 and certify a quorum. Could everybody please introduce themselves? And I have no conflicts.
Go ahead.
Susan Schomburg, no conflicts.
Tom Seib, no conflicts.
Wyatt, you're muted. Hi, Michael. Welcome. Wyatt and Michael, if you could please introduce yourselves and
Unmute.
let me know if you have any, or unmute. Yes, thank you. Let me know if you have any conflicts. Well, there's Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hello, finally I'm on here. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
No, I have no conflicts.
Great. And Wyatt, I know we saw you earlier. Are you there? All right. Well, so I know you had all received Michael's minutes from before, but let me just go through the agenda. I'm happy to report that Sarah let me know a few minutes ago that she's going to be attending our meeting. So I quickly updated the agenda and let's see if I can share and find it. And I have way too much open.
That's why they invented zippers.
All I need to do is get into
Sorry,
the
that's
meeting
just moving
folder.
into the- Tom, you look pensive.
Oh, I am. Well,
Let me get it.
I'm not as well
Let me
prepared
stop.
for the meeting as I would like, but I
Oh,
think
neither
I've
am
got,
I. Not in the least.
but I put together a PowerPoint to go through some of the comments that I've received so far. So,
Oh, great.
but I
Thank
did
you.
not distribute it because I was working on it as the meeting started.
Great. Thank you. I will let you share as soon as okay, so let me see, try sharing again now. I've got it up. Hopefully it will actually come up. Okay, can y'all see an agenda? Because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see
oh,
it.
there it is. It's hiding back here on my screen. Okay, so basically going through our conflict of interest, approving Michael's minutes from 2 meetings ago. I have a brief report, and then Sarah is going to be joining us at some point here, and I'm guessing she's going to want to talk about the FEMA issue, but I'm not sure. And then we could get into our policies and procedures, and then end the meeting. So on our schedule, I think we've got a 3-week period because we've already had 2 meetings this month rather, and the next meeting would typically fall on the 29th, but that's the 3rd meeting of the month. And thank goodness it's all Thanksgiving, so it works out. So our next meeting will be Friday, December 6th. Then we have our regular membership meeting on the 14th, and then and we have our executive board meeting actually coming up this next Wednesday, where I'm guessing we're going to be talking about FEMA type issues as well, and the regular membership meeting. I'm guessing the December 18th executive board meeting will be canceled, but I'm not sure. And then we decided last time to cancel our December 20th bylaws subcommittee meeting. So we'll be taking a little break. So basically we'll have one more meeting between now and the end of the year.
Yay.
Oh, the enthusiasm, Michael.
Yeah.
So does anyone have any comments on the agenda? Okay, so let me move on to, let's see if I can, I don't actually want to stop sharing. I want to move on to the other, oh, let me get back to see if I can share to get to the minutes. So did everybody have a chance to read Michael's minutes from, I think he sent it out like over 2 weeks ago.
I
There
don't
really aren't,
remember it.
really aren't
Okay.
a whole lot there.
No,
No, and don't have any for our last meeting either at this point. These minutes are now a little bit different, aren't they? Because we do a lot of talking, but not a lot of actions, and that's understandable. Yeah.
yeah, we're still kind of in the beginning phases of this thing, but so here are the minutes. Can you all see them?
Mm.
Can you see?
Yes.
Okay. So the only comment I had, Michael, is up in the report about the FEMA thing. At one point you say we have to have a requirement by the end of the year. And then later you do say correctly that we need to have it by December 1st, but I think that's clarified enough.
Okay.
But down on the subcommittee meetings, I think I'd have to go back and look at the video. And frankly, I just didn't have time to do it. But I think what we talked about was that in the bylaws, we require minutes. And there had been some discussion in the executive board meeting about, and in our bylaws meeting about, that they are a requirement. And so even though with the video and everything, that there should be at least some simple minutes with,
Yeah.
and in the policies and procedures to what should be included. And so part of that was that the community plan had decided, subcommittee had decided to not do minutes. And so that was kind of the basis for the discussion. So I think if we could put a correction that.
I will. I'll make that correction, send it out later today.
That sounds great.
Okay.
So does anyone else have any other comments? Do you want me to make it bigger? Do you want to actually take some time to read it while we're here?
I'm not sure about the word crafting on the PNP document for me, but other than that.
Well,
Okay.
what would give me a word? Give me a word, Tom.
I'm being facetious. Sorry.
Okay. So
Hearing.
How about creating out of whole cloth?
I think we're good with crafting. I think that's very good. So hearing no other corrections, the minutes are approved as to be corrected by Michael. Does that sound
Okay.
good?
Got it.
Good.
Any objections to that? Okay. So let's move out of that. And then I wanted to show you the updated letter. We'll just be moving in here to my report. So I have been working on this along with Tom Sipe over the last week or so, and not doing policies and procedures like I should have been doing but I don't know how much you guys have been keeping track of this FEMA issue, and I think that's what Sarah's going to be coming in and talking to us about. But how many of you had a chance to attend the urgent membership meeting on last Saturday?
I saw it.
I listened to the recording.
Okay. Oh, hi, Mike. Wyatt, good to see you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, you were muted before, but we hear you just fine. So
I had to
welcome.
come back in and redo it.
Okay. Do you want to give your conflict statement?
Yeah, I had it written down in case I couldn't be heard, so I have no conflict.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Wyatt. We couldn't see you either before. So at the beginning we could, and then your
You're acting like
video went off, but
acting like a lawyer, Wyatt.
Sorry about that. It's hard to break. I'm still in recovery.
So, oh, by the way, Mark let me know that he wasn't going to be able to join us today. He's traveling back from San Francisco. So, but so anyway, this has been kind of quite the topic, and I have to say, it's a really good. I think it was really good with the bylaws that we stuck in an urgent membership meeting and an urgent board meeting, and that we have an executive board. And by the way, that's the other thing, Michael, in your minutes, or no, that was in something else. Surveys, please call it executive board.
Oh yeah,
I'm
right.
hearing all these different ways of calling XCOM, committee, executive committee, X board, exec board. Anyway, we are have an executive board, and it really has proved handy throughout the year, but also particularly for this emergency situation here with the FEMA thing. So to be able to meet as an executive board and talk about having a letter and getting the letter prepared and approved and to the membership, and with a motion to allow giving the board some authority to make edits to the letter, et cetera. So, which we used liberally. And I have to thank Tom Sipe, because I was trying to edit it and just running into, I don't know, mental blocks, and called Tom and he came to the rescue as usual. But it's just really nice to be able to collaborate on writing together. And we went
Yep.
through it 2 or 3 different times, I think, and came up with this that I think we're pretty proud of. And then last night, and we'd set it out for review, key people, and then last night, Mark, who is going to be reading the letter at this joint meeting of the Board of County Commissioners and the Planning Commission that Sarah was running, Mark texted me about a half hour before he's supposed to talk and said, should it be the NESCO and Citizen Advisory Community? And should it be committee? And I went, oh my God, how did that get in there? So I quickly fixed it and he read it, but I don't know how I missed that. So anyway, so this is the final letter. And how did we do that, Tom? I think it was,
I
think we were
never looked at this signature block. Never
no,
looked
it
at
was up above. It was in the first line.
Was
It
it?
was right. It was right there.
Uh,
And
so
I think we had moved the fourth paragraph up to the first paragraph, and then we had to spell it out. And I think I just mistyped it, and then we just didn't. We
Well,
went
you were
on. So
probably looking at community plan, and the word community is in your head. Yeah.
I don't know, Michael. That whatever we know, but nobody caught it until Mark was ready to read it. So luckily he caught it. That was so. The official one is this,
Good.
and
It's very
anyway.
well done. Very well done, Lodi.
So yeah, so Tom Prohodich helped quite a bit too with some of the wording, and Sarah loved it. So that may be why she's coming today. So that is that. So the meeting last night, how many of you were able to attend the meeting last night?
I attended the last hour and a half.
Okay. So you were there when Mark read the letter?
No, I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you got to hear all the comments, because it went from
Yeah.
7 to 10, I think,
Oh my.
approximately.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And the first part was actually really interesting. If you want to go read the video or watch the video, because Sarah had an attorney there that was bringing some things in that I had not heard before, and about how she thinks FEMA is really not acting according to law. And she went through a lot of technical terms of how she doesn't think FEMA is acting according to law, and what legal basis they are saying that they're forcing us to do this. Sarah went through some actual examples of permit requests that they have in-house now, and what the result would be in terms of what hoops people would have to jump through under the current situation, and what they would be under each of the 3 options that FEMA is requiring us to choose from. And significant added costs. I mean, like really, really significant added costs to make it almost impossible. So that was interesting. And she had just put those things together yesterday, apparently. So that was all new. But we've been hearing it's a bleak picture of what could happen for property owners that have property within the community boundary in the floodplain areas. I guess it's not just the community boundaries, floodplain areas of Nesco and Tillamook County in general. But it can also affect those of us who have property outside the floodplain areas for infrastructure that might go through. And what they're finding is that FEMA people are, in some cases, just saying, too bad for you. And in other cases, they're saying, well, they might work with us. And other, this affects all the counties in Oregon except for 7 southeast counties. But particularly Tillamook County is hard hit and is taking a lead, I think, through Sarah on this. So while it doesn't exactly fit into our policies and procedures and bylaws, it has raised issues that affect our policies and procedures and bylaws. And one area is this urgent membership meeting where we were taking a vote. As Tom correctly pointed out, we are supposed to, by virtue of the policies and procedures, and I think it may even be in the bylaws, when we have a report to the county with a recommendation from the NCAC, that we are to put in the number of votes for and against, or abstaining. And in this case, it was a unanimous vote to support. But when we went back and looked at some point during the number of participants was over 78. But in terms of the number that I took screenshots of the participants closer to the voting time, which is toward the end of the meeting, and we had 60 that were individual logins. We had 92 that had registered, but when most people had their cameras turned off, but there were like maybe 8 or 9 cameras turned on, and of those 2 were couples. And so like Wyatt, you and your wife were both registered on there as Wyatt and your wife's name.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if you were both there because your camera was off. And so how do we handle votes like that? Is there a way we can put something in the policies or the procedures that when the chair is calling for a vote, for people to be, first of all, they should say whether they're a member. I think we should have something where people, like if it's in the poll question that comes up, I am a member, and I don't think we probably need to say, and I'm a member by virtue of being a property owner, B, a resident, B, C, whatever, just, giving the different options and have that in there in the poll to establish membership, which is still on the honor system, and then have an I vote, blah, blah, blah. Have a way that there's some kind of a distinguishing thing. If there are 2 people there at the computer, how do we handle that? Do we ask people verbally that if there are 2 of you sitting there at a computer, please turn on your camera, and each of you, one of you can vote on the poll and somebody else can do a voice vote? How important is it? If it's unanimous, maybe it's not that important, but if it's contentious, it will be. So some things to think about under voting when we get to those procedures that kind of came up through this.
Part of that is that the votes are actually a screenshot, in essence, basically 1 screen, 1 vote. And that has to do with the software that we're using to cast votes and count them and so on. So I think we may want to look more closely somehow to voting procedures, because your point is well taken. If it happens to be close, for example, on something of controversy, then it becomes a real issue. And there could be protests or whatever based on whatever controversial issue is rising. So I think we need to take a look at the software, 1, and number 2, how we recognize memberships, just as you suggest there. And at some point down the road, by the way, we might even want to look at vetting process. I'm not suggesting that we do it now, but it's an issue somewhere down the road that as things grow and become more official, if you will, that may become an issue.
Yeah, we did have quite a bit of discussion about vetting when we were doing the bylaws, and we had decided we would go with the honor system. And so I think Wyatt has actually come up with some language around honor system and what that means. I mean, you're right, Michael. We kind of went back and forth, and I think ultimately decided it's just too difficult to actually prove it, membership, and require that, but possibly have an annual registration where people put in their membership at that point. But even just add a vote if we have a short survey included in the poll is I'm a member by virtue of. And anyway, we could put some of that in the procedure part of it as opposed to the policy. But Wyatt has always, I mean, the way I was helped on this was Wyatt's statement, but he's very articulate. I'll let you say it, Wyatt, about how the honor system works.
Oh, it just basically that as long as people are informed about what the qualifications are, so that they can make an intelligent decision about whether they are qualified voters, which is something I addressed a little bit. That then the honor system would dictate, and people would act in quote good faith unquote to vote under these circumstances, which hopefully would meet the county's criteria for not excluding people, but at the same time, it's a mental tickler for people to say, please be honest about this and leave it alone at that. So
I think that for now, that's perfectly fine, Wyatt. But I can imagine somewhere down the road where it's going to be a different issue.
yeah,
I'm imagining, again, I'm not suggesting that we act on it now, but just because we're talking about it, these are issues that are going to at some point come up. And one of the things we might want to consider is something for purposes of the discussion, I call membership committee or something of that sort, where once a year or once a quarter or whatever, it's once a period of time, membership is established by this committee of people who are registered and what their connection is and how they're vetted, and that there is a list of voters, and that those voters on our application software of voting go to that particular list to register their vote. Now that's all pretty abstract.
yeah.
I'm not even sure how to do that yet, but at least those are the issues I think.
I think that creates some of its own problems, but I think that's to be determined.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were looking at how do we do that on the fly. I do
Yeah.
think the once a year registration is easy and we should be
Well,
able
there's
to do
also
that.
the thing such as in my situation where we have 12 members,
Right.
and but only 4 votes. Who gets to use those 4 votes? You know, and
Right.
I've raised that with our group, and they are all actually more than willing to allow me to do that. That's not an issue for us. For some others, it may be an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
once it-
anyway, I think, oh, go ahead, Tom.
once again, it falls back on the honor system.
Mhm.
And I think that the amount of invalid votes that would be cast is in the negligible area. So we don't want to get too fancy. If we start getting really fancy, it's going to be really hard to do.
Are you telling us not to shoot a mouse with a cannon, Tom?
I am trying to do that delicately.
But on the other
So,
hand, in this political day and age, right, about who's voting and voting veracity and all of that sort of thing, it's not a trivial issue.
mhm. So what ended up happening was that we actually only tallied 40 votes. Again, there could have been there could have actually been more than one at a camera, on a computer, so it could have been higher than 40, but it was unanimous. So Tom and I kind of went back and forth on are we sticking a number in or not, and decided it's unanimous. We're just not going to stick a number in. So because it's too hard to do. If there had been so many for and so many against, that would be different. But I think the unanimous was kind of the key thing, and so that's what we
Yesterday,
settled on.
yesterday at the faculty senate, we have 100 and some senators all over the state of Oregon, by the way, and it's a hybrid meeting. And there is a voting application that is used that is very discreet. per person, that is. So I'll tell you what, I'll look into that and see what that's all about. Because they're kind of stickler on this, by the way. And they do need to distinguish between voting members and non-voting members. So I'll find out what that
Yeah,
software is.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great, Michael, because right now Zoom is a very limited polling ability and
Certainly.
surveying
Yeah.
ability. So,
Mhm.
and we will be sticking in some more information in the policies and procedures about, we went through back and forth, quite a bit with Sarah, who went to county council and, ultimately got approval to not have to name names unless a roll call vote was requested for a vote. And then I found, as I was trying to figure out how many people actually voted, that Gary had actually posted a list on the NCAC website for that, in the documents folder that showed people's names and emails. And so I called him, and he was very nice about this, but I said, we can't do that. It sets a precedent, and we actually can't publish people's email addresses. That's not part of Oregon public meeting law. It's exempt. So he didn't know that, and he was being really efficient. I really appreciated his effort to get everything in there so efficiently, and he immediately removed it. But it's just something that shows how I think this policy manual basically is what we're writing is going to be helpful for new officers coming in, because it hadn't come up before, and so it ended up, what he had posted was really helpful for me in figuring out what to put in the letter, which was, but it was a good exercise to not have that. So, and of course, what our bylaws ended up ultimately saying is if somebody asks for a roll call vote, then we do it, and otherwise we don't have to publish all of that. But if we record it and save it, then it's public. So we just don't save it, is what we save the totals. So he didn't know you could do a report with the totals, and so we went through that. Anyway, he has been really terrific at taking over for Jeff and trying to figure out, posting things and doing a great job. So that's basically, well, so to go on the FEMA thing, I guess let me just finish out, because it is interesting. It sounded like at the end that after extensive and emotional public comment about the impacts of what this could be for people, that the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners were leaning toward entering into litigation, joining litigation that may be happening through the state, maybe asking for contributions from people, but there will be some financing for this. But to basically take option, I couldn't really tell if it was option 4 or option 5, but basically to tell FEMA where to go and follow up with a lawsuit so that they can't come in and say, we won't cover you with a lawsuit pending. To say, you are out of order legally in forcing us to take one of these options, and we need you to work with us to come up with a better plan to meet the requirements of the lawsuit. That was the basis for their making these demands. So,
Nancy, the interesting part about this is that FEMA is between the rock and a hard place, in the sense that they've got litigation pending against them for failure to do this earlier. And at the same time, they're being pushed by us. I would think they'd welcome the litigation from the standpoint of injunctive relief, so that it gives them the relief from the court order. And with the interesting information that you have about the fact that they've been acting illegally, it forms a great basis for injunctive relief to begin with.
mm-hmm. So that's the theory, and that was kind of the impression I had. Did you also, Susan? The impression I had from the lawyer, who was very impressive yesterday, was kind of that it kind of protects everybody by going into this litigation, and that they may actually, I don't know that she actually said that they might welcome it, but that it
Yeah, they
that
can't
they are,
officially say that.
no.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so frustrating for the county and for other people in Oregon is that they is that they're hearing different things from different people in FEMA at different times in FEMA, and they're not getting anything just rock hard saying you have to do this or that. And so every time they talk to somebody, they get a different answer. So at the urgent meeting on Saturday that Sarah came to, she did say that, the governor had written a letter that we had it. Tom and I ended up swapping in the governor's letter from the previous letter we had attached, because her letter went through both the property value side of it as well as the environmental side of it. And the FEMA had written back saying, rejecting her request to delay and give us more time. So the governor's behind it, all these people in the state are behind it, but they were also urging us to write letters to legislators. So I was glad to hear Sarah's coming, because at our board meeting on Wednesday, I want to propose, Sarah had sent a list of legislators to contact, all our contact information. And so I think probably we should send letters from official ones from NCAC, and we had a second motion to be able to do that at our urgent membership meeting to authorize the board to do it. But she's also urging individuals to do it as well. And one of the kind of the themes that were coming out last night from us, from other just people that were speaking, was that we do care about the environment. We absolutely understand the need to protect our fish and wildlife, and we've also been spending a lot of effort financially and every other way to do that in Oregon. We care about the environment. So, but and Tom's words in the letter and in the community plan, I didn't even realize they were his words that I had accepted from the plan, but was that by pushing us to do this so quickly, we could actually cause harm to the environment because we don't have anything well thought out. So,
Wow.
so that's one of the key messages.
Mhm.
Did you want to say something, Wyatt?
No, I was just impressed
okay.
by the fact, that's an additional basis for injunctive relief.
And that's what she said. The lawyer said too. She said that's
Yeah.
exactly some of the things that they're going to put in is, yeah, exactly that.
So I didn't see the meeting. Did any other community present a letter?
Yes. So 3 NCAC chairs attended and presented letters. And I would say ours was the most thought out.
Articulate.
um, Pacific City attended, sounds like they have a new chair, and she had a couple of letters from members that she read, and then her own statement, but nothing like we had where we had actually had a meeting and had a vote. And so when Mark read our letter, Sarah actually said, they actually, and it's in there that we had unanimously had a meeting and a vote, but she said, I attended their meeting on Saturday as well as the Pacific City one. And she said, they were unanimous. They were unanimous about this. So I think it was important for her. And then I don't remember who the one was from the last one, but they also had a letter as well. And then there were some other groups that read letters that weren't NCAC or weren't CAC type groups, but other county affiliated or business kinds of groups, contractors, that kind of thing. And then just a lot of individuals that were speaking. It was interesting watching it. I couldn't get Teams to work at the very beginning, so I missed the introductions, but I think it must have been the chair of the Board of County Commissioner. Sarah just texted me, hang on. That see, I was really impressed. She seemed to be running the meeting, and they let people speak longer than the 3 minutes. The people would speak again and again, and they kind of moved off of public comment into just talking among the 2 groups that were there officially. But people would still speak up, and I would have probably run a little tighter meeting on that, but I think people felt heard, and so they still. She was able to, they were taking a vote at this meeting, but they still needed to take some action. So she got authorization from both groups to go ahead and discuss entering into a lawsuit without waiting for the vote. So there's going to be another meeting on November 27th to actually take votes, but they went ahead, and because of the urgent nature, they gave Sarah and this attorney authority to at least start the process.
It occurs to me that the level of organization that the NCAC has achieved and sophistication, by the way, probably carries a lot of weight. That letter is testimony to that.
Oh, and I also want to mention, I said something kind of a throwaway to Tom Sype about it'd be nice if we had a letterhead. And of course, Tom just goes and comes up with the letterhead.
Actually, I
Using his
think
own-
that's a great idea. It really is.
using
Yes,
his own
absolutely.
photo.
And
and-
along the left column, do you have the list of chief officers? And
No, we didn't do that part.
no,
Maybe
no,
we
I
should
think
do that, but
let's step it up. Do it. Go for it.
let me see if I can bring it up so you can see it.
That was great.
It is. It's lovely.
So, isn't that nice? It's his photo that he photoshopped, and yeah, but yeah, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to actually do it.
Well, I think
we
if you can get the ghost forest in there too, Tom, I think that would be.
I've got a picture. I might be able to do that. I don't know. We'll see.
but kudos
That's for the
to Tom.
subcommittees.
So Sarah texted that she's trying to get in. So I guess she's trying to get out of whatever she's doing. So she's hopefully going to join us. But moving on, I think we'll go back and talk about FEMA stuff in the future, but because I'm imagining that's why she's coming in. But to go on now to policies and procedures, I have to admit I've spent pretty much all my time on the FEMA issues. So thank you guys for sending your drafts to Tom and to me of different things, and we can talk about some of those. Tom, so let me just ask first, did Michael and Susan, did you send your drafts to Tom
Yes.
as well as me? Okay, great. So, and then
I
why?
apologize, it was later.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
as you say, you
well,
were traveling for 3 days.
One of us was in the Pacific Islands.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, get by the background, guess who it was.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
okay.
I think that back. Yeah.
Good
So,
plan.
and then Wyatt,
Gatehead.
yeah, that's Cascade Head, right? Yeah.
All right, well, yeah, I mean, but it kind of looks like an island.
And then Wyatt sent I think 3 or 4 different things to me, and I think I responded on one of them. So sorry, Wyatt. But
All right.
but please feel free to always send your stuff to Tom too. So Tom, do you want to start sharing your document? Let me
Okay,
make sure. Let's see if I need to let you share. No.
okay. Yeah, okay, it's didn't throw up, so, okay.
Okay, great.
Obviously, you said, okay, great, so it's obviously there, okay.
It's
I think
there,
that's-
yes.
Okay, so, I haven't posted this yet. I just made it this morning, as I said.
Well, we've been busy.
Okay, so what I did was I copied the content so that we could discuss it better. And because I didn't necessarily understand what the actions were in the comments in policy 1. We currently have this text in the document, and that is is that an addition or a replacement?
That was proposed as a replacement, Tom.
Okay,
Oh, but I see on the proposed replacement that Wyatt and I did, it should be Nesquin Citizen Advisory Committee.
Yeah, Susan caught me on that one, and I failed to correct it before I said it.
No worries.
Yeah, that keeps coming up. We were doing that in our letter too.
Mhm.
And then put community somewhere else too. I think because there's the Nescoans Community Association, it just kind of flows.
Yeah.
Okay,
So could you guys talk about why, like, I take it you don't feel like we need to have any of the example
No, I
of the
thought that
records?
was not only limiting, but Susan and I thought it was kind of negative in tone.
Okay,
And I attached to this, as we sent it after Susan and I developed this, some comments, which unfortunately I don't see there, but would be helpful to kind of understand our
Well,
thinking.
well, that's
Maybe they're
the
lower
next,
down.
that's the next slide.
Oh,
Okay, personally, I think that's, proposed is fine. I don't have an objection to that. Anybody else have an objection to that? That's, all of this stuff, as I said in the here is, this is all stuff I've thrown on the wall. And if it doesn't stick, it does not hurt my feelings. So,
can you go back to the first slide,
okay,
please? Okay, so what are we calling policy one? Records?
um,
Is it record request?
now let's see.
Or-
I would just call it access, wouldn't you?
Access,
Member
member
access.
Yeah.
Okay,
And maybe
that
we should
helps.
strike member and just call it access to NCAC records.
You're right, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's public to anyone who dials in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Member was left over from, the
bylaws.
original, the bylaws.
Mhm.
So, and we lifted that from Robert's rules.
yeah.
So that sort of filtered through. Okay, no, no worries. Okay, let's go back to this.
I think it was actually even in the original bylaws, the old bylaws.
Yes, I think you're right, because we did morph that. How
It was one
quickly
we
I-
didn't change, I think. I think we just
Yeah.
brought it through.
Okay, so let me copy this and put that on the title. Okay. Okay, I'll fix it up later.
Yeah. Thank you.
There were a number of
Documents to the next
suggested
one.
procedures underneath this that we will, I assume, consider later, but
Yeah.
to really flesh it out. And I think those are going to be the kind of the muscle behind the whole thing.
So,
Should we take out the hyphen on subcommittees? Or is that just a hyphen because it's a new line?
where?
Under proposed on the first line, at the end. I can't tell if the system split the word or if and hyphenated it, or if there was a
Yeah,
deliberate hyphen.
yeah, if you do that. Oh, no, it didn't. Should be a,
And it probably is good to include the and its subcommittees, even though that's part of the committee, just to make sure the subcommittees understand that they need to
Right.
make everything accessible.
okay, we don't actually need this as part of it,
What was,
Right.
but that was the policy one.
okay.
That was just left over.
Yeah, all records for records. Excellent.
I'm good with that. So we have some more details with comments. Anybody, do we need more time on this?
Could we change shall not include to exclude? Under this access shall not include to this access shall exclude.
Exclude.
Just to make it even more stringent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Are we done?
Anyone else? So you've got more explanation here.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, about policy tool, that was just came in. That was added in revision 6 because somebody mentioned it during a meeting. I don't remember what. So I wrote it down.
Okay.
We don't have to have it. I don't think it's needed. So we could delete it. Um,
And what was policy 2? I know I reviewed this, but I can't remember offhand.
maintenance of the
Brain
website.
Ah. Okay.
That's a procedural, those are procedural things rather than policy things. So
Yeah,
it's likely should be moved to procedure.
As long as we make sure that we're archiving, to me, some of the archiving stuff should be a policy. How we do it would be a procedure, but the fact, we've had quite a bit of discussion and I don't think they're doing it correct, or they're not doing it now, is saving things on the Google Drive is what I think they're maintaining. And so if something happens to the Google Drive, we don't have those records. So we had talked about having a policy, I think it's actually in the bylaws, but of storing on an external drive, but we haven't said how we would do that. So I think we still need something. But these things are probably procedural.
Okay, so I'll move that to a procedure.
But the record retention policy, that 4th bullet, to me is a policy.
Okay.
But not the procedures part of it, but the
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, record retention.
and we have to work with Gary on this, on what makes sense, that's not too hard, and media can change and all that kind of thing. But I think right now we had talked about checking with Sarah and the county about, can they maintain records for us as a
Yeah.
backup? And then we have our records on the Google Drive, but also have it backed
Actually,
up
it's
at the
worse.
county.
It's worse than that. We don't have the videos on Google.
That's right, YouTube, right?
It's YouTube, which is even more, well,
Mhm.
I don't know, equally suspect.
Mhm.
Right. So, right. So that was a question I think that we had as an action item, that Sarah was going to be checking actually with the county. So why don't we ask her that when she comes on line about
Yeah.
who would we talk to, or is she going to talk to about county storage?
Okay. While I think of it, why don't I go ahead and do this and get it in there? Pardon me while I do a little bit of maintenance in front of you. There you go. So that's a change. Now, back to the discussion. So we've I think we've resolved that. I think we've resolved this one.
Uh-huh.
So I think all of this is
Right.
we have agreement on.
Yep.
Okay.
I like how you did this with the discussion. Thank you, Tom. With the color coding.
Well, I was trying to figure out how to do this, and I think, okay, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to have to make it a PowerPoint. Much as I lived and died by PowerPoints, I don't actually love it.
It's helpful though.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So,
Okay, this is what we just talked about in terms
Yeah.
of Gary putting things on. Yeah. So we put some of this in the bylaws. And I think we were going to put more extensive language in the policy. So I just kind of threw this out there in the green. It's not meant to, be the formal wording.
Well, I understand, but it's a discussion we need to
Right.
all
Right.
look at it. So I think we have general agreement on that.
And then Tom and I talked about it throughout the when feasible, because as we found on Saturday's meeting, it's not always feasible.
And
So
we have a failure of the software on occasion. We did that in previous member meetings.
right, right, and we did on Friday too with the second vote, because by the time Mark and Gary had prepared these two polling questions, and by the time we kind of got through the discussion in the meeting, and we learned some new things from Sarah, the motions were changing, and they couldn't really get it changed on the fly, and so from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, Michael, they really need to be able to record what the words are for the vote. And because everything was sounding unanimous and it was getting long, they just kind of threw it out without doing a formal vote on it at the end. It was like, if there are no objections, we will authorize the board to follow up with these other things. So it's Michael, you're muted, or I can't hear you. I think you're talking, but I can't hear you. Well,
You're gonna have to go out and come back in. Apparently, that's how
I don't
that's
understand it. Yeah.
it's happened to me a couple of times.
Yeah. Strange. It was happening with the lawyer last night too. She would just suddenly go, although at least the microphone was showing muted or unmuted. It would just suddenly mute on her.
Hmm.
So I think this is an area that, because of what we were just talking about, actually, we should probably broaden this some more. I can take that as an action if you'd like to, just based on this last meeting. How do we identify multiple people attending from one computer? How do we, should we put something in there about, people have to say how they're a member, as part of a vote, etc. So could you capture some of that in there,
Hear me
Tom?
now?
Yes.
I
Now you're
wonder
muted.
I wonder also if they could put in the chat if they've got two people on a screen, because at least the chat is
Mhm.
archived.
That's a good point, Susan. Michael, I
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, you asked me about clarity in writing the motions and making sure they were there. That always happens for some reason or another when a motion comes from the floor. People immediately start changing or changing words or whatever. And as a parliamentarian, I listen to the intent, and if it's real clear, I don't even open my mouth. My feeling is the less I'm heard, probably the better. But that in the final run, if the intent is clear and what we're really talking about is grammar, then let it go. But if there's anything significant, then that ought to be a clear message to any parliamentarian. So, whoa, wait a minute, let's clarify that and let's make sure that's there. The second thing occurred was that there were really two votes on one ballot, and that needed to be changed right away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because that could be a cause for error and confusion and maybe even misvoting. That's a problem as well. And again,
That's a really good point. Could you, let me just interrupt you for a second,
Sure.
because Tom's typing. Can you say one motion or one question per poll?
Yes, I think that's good. Yeah, per ballot. Yeah, that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, go ahead, Michael, sorry.
No, that was it. I'm just kind of filling in there.
That was a problem, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was definitely, I couldn't go back then and ask the question. And,
Well, it's
yeah.
very similar to a single question having double intent.
Mhm.
Um,
So
rather,
I may need to get in there with Gary and do a training on writing polls, because we had
Yeah.
quite a bit of experience with that during our feedback sessions.
And
And
not only that, but the polls ought to be done separately as well.
exactly,
Not throwing up two of them at once, because that's confusing.
exactly. And I
It
think
puts-
it's confusing when you're on Zoom and you're writing them.
Right.
I just need to go over with him how to separate them out so that they're separate questions. Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
I just requested from the faculty senate while you were discussing the software that they use. It's really quite effective, and it's very definitive as well, and it's tied to the person voting.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
So
And that might make it so that if there were two people at a terminal, they could both vote even.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let you all know if and when that comes in.
Okay, thank you.
I see these all procedural things, I believe.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, did I
Yes.
capture all the points?
Well, there's one other point too, and that is the identity of a person voting. Do we want that?
No. Well,
Why not?
we don't want to record it,
Why not?
because if we record it, it will be public. And so we don't want to save a recording of it. We can record it at the time, but we went back and forth with this question when we were doing the bylaws. And
Yeah.
the concern was, if you're voting, particularly like for officers,
Mhm.
or committee members, or on something really contentious, people might not feel comfortable voting against a friend for someone that they feel would do a better job, or for an opinion that might be unpopular to their friends if they knew their vote was going to be public.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so that's where we had gotten a consensus from people in our feedback sessions on this issue, that they would rather not have it unless, and the county attorney agreed to it, as long as we had an option that was clearly stated about, roll call voting. If somebody asked for a roll call vote before the vote, that we would certainly do it that way. If not, we don't, as long as we didn't save it, the names that associated with a vote, we didn't have to produce it.
Yeah.
If we saved it, we would have to produce it. And so we wrote that into the bylaws because we wanted to be really, really clear that was the agreement. So,
I'm sort of in the middle on there. In a democracy, people should not be afraid of having their vote known by other people if it is a public forum. Private balloting, of course, is another thing. But at the same time, you're right. People do get feelings in there as well.
So, and because, we entered into this whole bylaws rewrite partly because of how contentious the NCAC had been the year before last. And we still have the STR issue, that's the short-term rental issue, that's very, very concerning, and there can be with voting on people. I think the feeling was that if you want to get the most qualified people, you want people to vote who they think is best rather than for their friends necessarily, or
Yeah.
so, but there's still the option. If somebody wants to have a recording, they just have to ask for it.
Roll call vote, yeah.
So we do identify initially who's voting. And by answering the question, this is how I'm a member, they're being forced into the honor system somewhat, right?
Yeah.
Then I think we're capturing that. But then when we capture the votes, there's a way, and I can't remember if Gary was showing it. Jeff always did, and we did when we were doing the feedback sessions, where you can show the overall results. you know, how many yeses, how many nos, how many this answer, how many that answer, and that's what we would capture and record. But I don't know, are there any other discussion on that? Do we want to reopen that for the bylaws?
I do, but not now, please. I think this is still to be clarified for us, and maybe a new piece of software that's more discreet and discriminating might help immensely. But I think you're right. It's an issue to be discussed, but I think if people want confidentiality, and I understand your reasons why, we ought to honor that.
I was just thinking too, it would be interesting to know the cost for the software that they use, Michael, because we might be able to apply for a grant through the NCA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, and I don't think that it is like a subscription cost. I doubt if that's the case. It's probably just a purchase cost, and I don't think it's all that much. So that ought to be a simple thing to get. I mean, it's an important thing. I certainly wouldn't be, I would certainly be in favor of participating and paying for that and somehow. I mean, it's an important issue. I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Which kind of brings up, Susan, this grant business through the NCA. So I think we talked about that a little bit in the last meeting too, but we can move on from this part now.
Okay.
Um,
This is 2 of 3. I've got one more screen if we're done with this.
mhm. Thank you, Tom.
This is part of the procedure. We can craft that in procedures.
Mhm.
I didn't have any comments. I agree. So circling back to policy 1, do we need anything in the policy itself other than the changed paragraph? And is the rest of it procedures?
I think Susan and I viewed it as procedure, certainly.
Okay, so
So we
that's
had 2
the,
policies though, right? There's policy 1 and policy 2, and one is access to records and the other is about voting, right?
yeah. So let's go back to that.
Or
These
maintenance.
seem to be, except for bullet 4, they are all, so we need to what we need to do is we need to add that as a note here.
What's
And I
that?
think this is Wyatt and Susan, not Nancy and Susan.
Okay,
I had mentioned earlier while my audio was not working that sometimes public libraries have a program where they can keep public records. And I just was thinking about that.
Also the state archives.
Yeah.
county should have something similar.
Hmm.
And with the videos, as long as they are, it's gonna have a lot of storage.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we need, so follow-up for Wyatt and Susan is record retention policy and archive procedures, no, but policy.
Do we want to have
Mhm.
that as a policy 2 rather than folding it into policy 1?
It's a record, it is,
Question.
well, what I'm proposing is this entire thing gets moved to procedures, except for that.
Mhm.
And that gets moved into policy 1 because that is a policy. It's going to be relatively short,
Yeah,
but
I'm
the
just
rest of
wondering if it should be separated and be its own policy.
One's access and one's maintenance.
Mhm.
Okay, fair enough.
yeah, I agree.
Maintenance of NCAC information. Okay,
Records.
Yeah, records. Let's,
okay. And
Is it maintenance, though? I'm wondering if that's the correct word, because maintenance sounds like we're changing things.
in the strictest sense, it is maintenance, but because we're just adding, that is a form of maintenance. That's splitting hairs. Probably not obvious to everyone as
But
in
I like what you
probably,
use, record retention policy,
uh,
like NCA record retention policy, or what's, pardon me, I'm just gonna block
okay,
it.
fair enough. Where is it? There it is.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Okay,
And so I think we had an action item for me to check with the county on using their thing, correct?
Yes.
So, Michael, can you capture that?
Yes, I
action item,
did.
please.
Just got it.
Thank
Thanks.
Thank you.
okay. And I will, right now I'll highlight it, but I'm going to move this out
Yeah.
to the, I don't want to do that live edit.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I don't want to make you suffer through me fumbling through edits.
Now, was
Um,
someone assigned to this policy too? I don't remember.
Say again?
Sorry, was a team of two assigned to this policy too?
Does not appear, oh, Nancy looked like she took it on
Yeah, I think I'm
herself.
supposed to do this. So
Nancy is the team of two. Well, you know, that
I
makes
am the
sense.
team of two and I have not done it. So yes. So thank you, group, for helping me with this.
no, I'll tell you what, Nancy, I'll go ahead and do it, submit it to you.
Sounds good. Wyatt. uh, but I have a feeling there's going to be some more of this FEMA stuff that
I think you have enough to do.
basically we have, but I'll check with the county. But yeah, I think this FEMA stuff has kind of taken over our lives. Although maybe not. I mean, we might not have to do, other than these letters to legislators, I'm not sure that it sounded to me like they were really heading toward a decision. It'd be really nice if Sarah's able to make it to kind of clarify that for us, but I'm hoping we don't have to actually do another separate letter from NCAC to the county Board of Commissioners.
Okay,
Did you get that impression, Susan, too?
Yeah, I'm hoping that I thought the legal strategy sounds awesome.
Yeah.
okay, anything more about policy 1 and 2? Because we have policy 9 to work on.
Okay.
Hearing nothing?
Go for it.
Okay, I did not comment on this because I have read it and that's it. I didn't see anything that I objected to, but I'm going to read it again.
So Susan sent this out yesterday, and thank you, Susan and Michael, for coming up with this. So as you know, Susan is actually the sole member currently of the Outreach Task Force, and we're looking for more people to join her. So she's kind of taken the lead. Do you want to talk about this, Susan and Michael?
Well, the main thing, the two things are trying to grow the membership. And so I loved what Tom Sype had in the community plan, how it's broken into neighborhoods. And so I just thought it might be nice to get at least one person from each of the neighborhoods. And that's why I had them listed from the community plan. So that they would know their neighborhoods, and they could, you know, talk it up and know who's not in the NCAC possibly, or, you know, people that are moving into the neighborhood. So that's where my idea came from that. I'll be honest, when I wrote this, I feel like I've kind of blended policy and procedure, and that's my only concern about what email to Nancy and Tom is splitting it out. I just kind of got the ideas on paper. So I'm really open to, and there's a little bit more past this, but
Yeah, could you go back to the previous slide? Is Sahali Shores spelled with the two H's like that?
Yeah, but I was gonna make the point that Sahali Shores is the upper end of Sahali and in the ghetto here, which is called Sahali South. So we may want to just change that to Sahali.
okay.
The ghetto.
Yeah, the southern ghetto, Michael.
I wouldn't know that, and that's the key to having people in
Mhm.
the neighborhood.
That's because the
It's a
only sign
really
up,
good point.
Susan, is Sahali Shores.
And I drive right past it.
That's a really, I really like what you did there, Susan, to try to have somebody from each neighborhood.
South Beach, man, that's a big neighborhood. Let me
It
tell you.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
that's
diverse.
that- it really is. And
How does it break out, Michael?
I don't really know. I guess they're, maybe by streets or whatever, but there's the cove, there's the South Beach Cove where our place is. That we really have to go all the way to the surf and then swing back around to get to the cove. And then there's all of the neighborhoods near the creek and so on. And then where Gregory and Candace live up on the hill there. And then there's all of the folks way up on top. Yeah, that's a large area. And I was thinking, it might be worth my while sometime to just go around and drop a note on folks' door to increase awareness. You put that in my head, Susan, and thank you for doing that. And also, Susan mentioned if we could have a centralized location where we can put up information. And we were thinking of like maybe the golf course or maybe approaching the owner of the store for that area right there at the parking lot between the store and the Hawk Creek Cafe, that grassy area, if there was some kind of well-built community bulletin board there. I mean, those are possibilities as well. But the task, Susan's got a job. This outreach kind of a thing is a big deal. And certainly, I think lady, you need some help.
That's why I was thinking breaking it out into neighborhoods, because I mean, it's even hard to get a handle on the village because the village is big too, and I'm familiar with people but still there are families that I'm not aware of. Obviously, I know the people on my street quite well.
And it might be nice to, if we get this going, to break that into, where you could actually send something out through the NCAC that we're seeking members for the outreach task force from these various neighborhoods, so that you could, we're looking for you to represent your neighborhood on, outreach
Kind of
issues.
like team captains.
Right. It's a nice idea, I think. I'm wondering in terms of a bulletin board, we've talked with Alexis Tate about having space in her store to post something that would just be not every meeting or kind of notice, but like, here's the NCAC, here's how you get onto the website, here's how you become a member, blah, blah, blah. And she was a little reluctant, but sounded like she might work with us. But I'm wondering if not, about getting a grant. I'm learning about the NCA has money. Getting a grant to put an official bulletin board up, like in the parking lot, across from the store and the restaurant, over there near the restrooms or something, where somewhere central that would be public property, that there could be a general community bulletin board. But then who would run it? Who would own it? Who would who would decide what goes in
Well,
there,
yeah,
et cetera.
that's what I was thinking, that little grassy area next to, right between Hawk Creek, the cafe and the store by the parking lot there. That's kind of, that's kind of what I think of as the community square almost. Where, the post office used to be a post office. Did we have a post office? Yeah.
We did. It was closer to across from Gray Fox rental.
That would be the obvious place, of course, but that's no longer.
The parking lot by the bus stop is a perfect place and it's Tillamook counties.
Oh, is that right? Where's the bus stop?
Where they have the two mailbox units. The towers.
It's right by the store as you come in through the entrance on off Highway 101. It's to your left there.
Where the bookmobile parks.
Okay, so it's not where the restrooms are in the public parking.
No, it's across the street.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's state property is
Oh, yeah.
the restrooms,
Ah,
so we can't do that.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
Susan also mentioned the post boxes in South Beach, just as you go into the gate.
Yeah.
That might be a good place as well.
So maybe try to find 3 that would work.
Yeah.
So I think we're on page 2 already. We're talking about page 2, but what do people think about this page 1 part of it?
I like it.
I like it.
Okay. To me, it's pretty much per procedure. We outlined the task force, the outreach task force in the bylaws. So it doesn't really need a policy past that. So I think this is all procedure and it's great procedure. I like it.
I do too.
Okay. So we're gonna you have agreement, this is actually procedure?
Have I left out any neighborhood that anyone can think of? I thought the community plan did an awesome job of identifying,
Thank
What
you.
about Wanema?
And Tom
Right.
even has a nice map for the neighborhoods that maybe we could stick under the references.
Sure. I think it might be there already. I don't know. I meant to put it there.
No, that's a good point, Wyatt. Is Wynema, I know it's part of the NCAC greater, which boundary are we supposed to be using on this? I should ask. The red boundary, the watershed boundary, or the blue boundary?
Well, as far as we're concerned, the red boundary, but as far as the community plan, only officially covers the blue. But being the NCAC is this area, the big area.
Red.
So then Wynema, that is a good point, because there are homes up there.
Quite a
closer.
few, actually.
Yeah, I think we need to add Wynema.
Okay, we can add that if you can spell it for me.
Winema.
Yeah, WIEMA.
Winema. Yeah.
Wynema, okay.
Wine.
And the other thing I was thinking about, maybe I should have alphabetized the neighborhoods to not appear that there's any,
Bias.
exactly. Because I'm in the village, I don't want it to look like there's bias because I put the village first. Just a thought.
Oh, that's a good idea. It really is. I always do that on, minutes. I've always
Yeah.
done that, yeah. Alphabet,
Okay.
more Greek.
Mhm.
Okay, and this is something we can kind of adjust as we go along too. So why don't we go to page 2? So when you say permanently displayed NCAC meeting notices, Susan, do you mean having a general sheet saying, this is the NCAC, this is what our mission is, our meetings typically are
Yeah.
blank, and
Yes.
go to this website for more information, but not have like before every meeting like Jeff was doing all last year, going
How
out and
about-
actually posting
about-
flyers.
How
for
about
each meeting.
permanently display site for?
Yeah.
Permanent display site for,
Mhm. That's exactly, kind of like a one sheet informational.
yeah.
So rather than not notices necessarily, meeting notices, it would be for NCAC
Information.
yeah.
You could
information.
actually drop permanent. I don't think that's necessary.
Do we
Display-
really need a procedure for outreach?
I think so, because if you get somebody who doesn't know what the expectations are,
Yeah,
I don't know, I just think it's a good,
it's a good point.
if
Yeah.
someone say moves to Nesquin from, somewhere out of the state, for instance, and they just want to know what is kind of the culture and the expectation.
Yeah, it's more of a goals or something than it is a
Yeah.
procedure.
Well,
mean,
it's
The
a
idea
new
of
task force.
looking into a possibility doesn't strike me as a procedure.
Mhm. Oh, I see on the second sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
was more
it's
free thinking and what my
Yeah,
ideas were. I
sure.
totally agree with you, Wyatt. Yeah.
yeah, because the other parts of it, it's a new task force, and so I think it is important to have something that really delineates what the responsibilities of the task force
Yeah,
are.
and I think it sets out a set of expectations too.
I know at the general meeting, someone raised the question, well, what do you anticipate doing with this? And I remember I kind of was off the cuff and I said, well, some ideas I currently have, and I just,
Yeah.
so that's where I was.
No, I mean, I like what you said. I'm just not sure structurally it's a procedure.
Yeah, totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Um, are you thinking it's not really a policy though either? What are you thinking?
It's a job description.
Well,
Well,
that's kind of
but-
what I'm thinking of this
Oh,
document though. Maybe you raise an interesting point, Wyatt. I wonder if if it's policies, procedures, job descriptions, and resources, or it's going to be like PB and J sandwiches or something. But it's
PPR and
but,
D.
and actually
JDs.
in another group I'm in, we do have a separate document called job descriptions, but it's
Mhm.
more than just a job description. It's a task force description of.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we have something to to noodle over.
yeah,
Do
and
we?
because we don't have an outreach task force, we're kind of creating something from
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
And
No, Susan, I think it's good. I think it's good. And because you do raise that other issue, what do these areas that we are creating, what are they expected to be doing?
right. And at some point, we're going to be talking about all of the officer
Yeah.
job descriptions,
Uh-oh.
which, partly in the bylaws, but we're going to be elaborating on them in the policies and procedures document. So do we want to have a separate section under job descriptions? But to me, task forces and subcommittees are a little different than just a job description. So I don't know.
It's
Good
kind of a job.
discussion.
It's kind of a job description. Mouse and cannon comes to mind here.
Nelson Cannon.
Um, So I can turn these into some proposed language, but I would propose that these all go in procedures.
Mhm.
And procedures is we're gonna say we're gonna interpret procedures in the broadest possible context. A job description is kind of a procedure.
Yeah.
It's how you're supposed to proceed in your job.
Sounds good. I really like this idea of advertising or in Oregon Coast Today. What a thought! And doing special guest speaker programs and
Ooh,
stuff. That's
yeah,
really
I like
interesting. I
that.
love
It's
that.
I think
free
that's
to
marvelous.
list, and I've noticed other communities do it, and I thought Nesquin's never done it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, last night I was at a CERT meeting and we were bemoaning the fact that we have very few active members of CERT, and they would love to give a presentation on what CERT is and why you should join.
Yeah,
Well,
and the volunteer fire department maybe. And
Oh, God, yeah, we need a lot. We need people,
yeah, you
particularly ones
certainly,
under 50.
Tom,
Yeah,
you certainly should do that.
yeah, it's a great idea, Susan. Susan, the chair of the subcommittees and task forces are automatically members of the executive board. So you're the only one. So you're sort of automatically at the
He's
moment the
showing me
chair.
something that
So,
needs to be put in here then.
so I know you were planning on being the chair, but until there's someone else, you're kind of that. And so at some point,
acting,
as we're talking about this, yeah, acting chair, it might be something to come up, to a meeting and maybe talk to Mark ahead of time, but to bring up some of these ideas to bounce off the board.
Mhm.
And I could send him a note just saying we talked about this in our meeting today, and
Yeah, sure.
what do you think about having Susan come in and talk about some of these ideas? Because that would be really cool, I think, to add. It would add a lot to our membership meetings if we don't have a crucial issue to talk about, to have like a half-hour presentation or something by these different groups.
It's
And,
the
and
worst of all possible situations, but the FEMA situation strikes me as something for people to coalesce around
Mhm,
and increase the membership and participation.
Absolutely.
mhm,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think this would be something that would generate interest as well. Bear
Does the
education would
county have
certainly get people.
does the county have the ability to communicate other than by snail mail with certain sections of the county, i.e. zip codes or otherwise?
Um,
Oh, no.
you mean through email addresses? I
Yeah,
think
like the reverse 911 system without the emergency.
Oh,
good question for Sarah too.
yeah.
I haven't heard of that. Uh,
I mean, it seems to me electronic notices to people who sign up to
mhm,
receive them, like you do your bad weather notices,
Yeah.
for stuff like FEMA, that kind of thing, would be a real plus from the standpoint of community communication.
Yeah, that's
mhm.
an awesome idea.
Isn't that what kind of like SnailChimp does? Or MailChimp, excuse me.
I, you're talking to a lawyer, not a technician, Michael. I have no
Okay.
idea.
okay, so,
Yeah, maybe there's a non-emergency nixle.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I think Tom
So,
was
I
trying
mean,
to
yeah,
say
so,
something.
the CERT system does have a notification. I just got a notice a little bit ago, but the high surf,
Mm.
so, that mechanism exists, whether or not we could replicate that for the county. Because
Tom,
the CERT,
is that a South Tillamook thing or is that a county thing?
that's a South Tillamook, actually.
Okay,
Well, it's South Tillamook CERT, which is,
yeah.
and there's some nebulous connection somewhere.
And
But,
they might not want to be diluted with non-emergency
oh, yeah,
types of
I mean, I'm
things
not saying
too.
to use
So,
this,
but
I'm not using
duplicate
the
it or
same one.
something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But have a sign up
Uh-huh.
that people could sign up to get reminded that there's a meeting about to go on, that there's, this
Why don't,
issue or
why
what.
don't, why don't we capture that in here, Susan?
Yeah, I think it'd be great if CERT came in and
to
talked. I mean, they used
well,
to have emergency preparedness people come and talk to and
well,
see.
I might actually look at having the task force coordinate development of a non-emergency
Oh, I see what you're saying.
communication system. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got it through NCAC, but it's possible. Oh, I guess Sarah's not gonna be able to make it.
She just let you know that
She's not gonna make it after all. Okay.
that's a good guess at 10:30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Implementation.
I wonder procedurally whose phone would be used for that text message communication system. But I
It
guess
doesn't, it's independent of
it
a
is?
phone number. Yeah, I get a code number.
Okay.
Let's see.
And then is it opt-in, Tom, or is
Yeah,
it an
yeah.
opt-out kind of a thing? They So
Yeah,
that somehow they have to hear about it to be able to opt in to the
yeah, so,
CERT system.
yeah, for instance, the CERT automatic weather, automated weather alert is lists itself as 9988-911. That was an emergency kind of a thing, but yeah, it just gives it a series of numbers.
Mhm. So
And
interesting.
I get all these kinds of things.
Interesting.
MailChimp
Anyway,
costs,
when
MailChimp costs $20 a month. And I'm sure that there are other options there, but those are lists of emails for an entire organization, and you just send out what you're going to send out, and it automatically goes to everybody. You build your email list, and it's really quite an effective application.
Yeah, but this is
so
talking
they
about text messages rather than email.
and we have an email system for NCAC. It's limited, but it has over 700 addresses on it. So that's
Oh my,
what
yeah.
the NCAC currently sends out on, but we're limited to 5 a month.
5.
5. So they
Wow.
have to be really careful on how many to send. So like when this FEMA thing came out and
Yeah.
suddenly we've got emergency urgent meetings here and there and different, and I don't know, I was seeing these things go pop, 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 and the date is the 5th or some date where we finally got over the threshold to be able to send more out, and we're limited. So yeah, that's something I think that's through their Zoom account, but I'm not sure. Anyway.
And I know that
Um,
it has written articles in the NCA newsletter, which
yes.
been great.
Yeah. So I don't know. Could you put just a bracket under this one we just added? We'd need to coordinate with communications task force probably on that too. There could be some
Well,
relationship there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's even better.
Mhm.
it's, words like that. I'll make it better.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
we could add in CERT, volunteer fire into those lists that Susan has. I think this is
Yeah.
great, Susan.
Just
Does
something
anyone
to
have
help
any
people.
other? Yeah, does anyone have any other thoughts in terms of particularly in the area of finding officers and committee members? Because that's, we folded the nominating committee into this function. And so there was something I think on the previous page about finding people. Oh, there it is at the top of this page. It's creating an awareness of positions, but this is where it got a little hairy on going out and soliciting people in a more direct way. That was kind of what the nominating committee was supposed to do. I think with the task force, we have to be careful that we keep it within the confines of routine to be able to keep it, got into the confidentiality issue. The task force doesn't have to meet publicly. So there's no vetting that the task force does for finding people, but what about solicitation of people? I think we did talk about this for the bylaws. Is it just more creating awareness? Advertising positions? Was there anything about, really anybody could go talk to anybody about, hey, why don't you run for president or chair, or why don't you run for bylaws subcommittee or something?
Well, that's how
So,
Gary happened. Somebody cornered him, I think, convinced him.
I can guess who too.
Not
Can't
me.
you?
No, I know. I
But somebody
don't think
sounds,
so.
somebody sounds a
Somebody's
lot like me.
brother-in-law. Yeah, somebody's brother-in-law. Yeah, Tom Prohodich. Anyway, I'm guessing.
I'm guessing too.
Mhm.
So this to me sounds really good. So you're going to massage it some, Tom, and bring
Yeah,
it back. And,
I'll massage it and roll it into procedures.
This is really
Okay.
creative.
Mm-hmm.
Good job, Susan.
Yeah. So
If
I'm going to talk to
anybody
Mark
has
about.
any other suggestions, especially for possible programs, I'm very interested to know that.
Well, I love the idea of having this at a, at really every membership meeting. Why not include like a half-hour program?
That's a great idea, Nancy.
Well, what Susan has here, yeah. So I'm gonna put that in the list of things to talk about at our board meeting on Wednesday night, but I'm gonna contact Mark too and just see about having you on the agenda, Susan, to talk about outreach task force. That's okay.
We're walking a little bit beyond our charter, but I think it's really good.
Yeah, well, it just so happens Susan happens to be on our committee, but she's also her own. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is something we've been using the executive board meetings for, is to bring out ideas from our bylaws or our policies and procedures, and we'll do more and more. So,
Could you also bring up a possible CERT presentation? Because
Yeah.
yeah,
they would love to do that, but they don't know. We're falling below critical mass.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's awesome.
yeah, we'll do.
Tom, what does CERT stand for?
Citizen Emergency Response Team.
Ah, gotcha. How many people are that critical mass?
Right now we have 8.
8.
If something bad happens, 8 people isn't going to do a whole lot of
Oh,
good.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
should have one in at least each of the designated neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
My husband and I both
2,
took CERT
actually,
training.
ideally 2, because
Right.
nobody goes by themselves.
Right. My
Right.
husband and I took CERT training down here. It's kind of a national program, I think, and
Yeah, it is.
yeah, it's really good training.
Yeah.
So I'm sure
yeah.
Corvallis has it too, Michael.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's something I'd like to learn about.
I'll send out a pointer to the website.
Yeah,
I'm sure I
okay.
could find it again.
Yeah.
Michael, how do you feel about structure fires?
They're a hot topic, Wyatt.
Good enough. You got a heartbeat and you're interested.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael. Well, of course, Michael doesn't live there, Wyatt, so it's a little hard for.
Yeah, that's true. But we're there often enough. I mean,
We'll take a part-time.
yeah.
How many do you have on your volunteer fire department?
Well, the problem is
Uh,
the volunteer fire department spread between like 6 communities. And so in
Oh.
our station,
Yeah.
we have nominally 6 volunteers, but really only 4 reliable. And our average age is somewhere close to 60.
While you raise that issue, Wyatt, you opened the door for me. My son-in-law is a very clever and talented engineer. And
We've got his fans. We've got his fans.
Do you have them?
We got him on every rig.
Well, good for you. Do you know that he and I started that business in 2004, and it is now international, and it is the talking points for places all over the world.
All of our rigs have been retrofitted to charge those fans
Oh my, yeah,
through an umbilical system
yeah. Do you
so that they automatically work without power supply.
do you know about the quickie?
Not sure about that one.
That's the newest one. It's very small, but it's even more powerful than the previous fans, and it was engineered from the ground up.
So
Anyway.
this is completely off topic, but I have to ask, why would you use a fan in a fire? I guess
A
to
fan
protect
in the
from
fire,
heat,
It's called
Ventilation.
PPV,
ventilation.
positive pressure ventilation. Because of the gases and the heat that are in a building, what you want to do before you go in that building is evacuate those dangerous chemicals and so on. And so you put a fan at the beginning, and you open up a window at the end, and it will. When we first tested these out back in about, I don't know, 2011, we went to the first floor of a dormitory at OSU and put a fan on the first floor, and then opened a single window at the top 5th floor, and it emptied out that entire building in 25 seconds.
Really?
Yes,
Seriously?
yes.
You just
And
threw
just-
the, wow.
Just up, and we, you know, just put it up through the stairwell. And,
Oh.
and this was done by the Corvallis Fire Department, and they just went, holy crap. And we
That's
were off and
cool.
running. We were off and running.
It allows
Wow,
entry
exciting.
into the structure to get to the seat of the fire
There,
without hurting people, because most of the equipment that people wear will melt at
yeah.
about 300 degrees. And some of those houses that are closed in but on fire will be reached 1200 degrees.
Wow.
We
Wow.
named it,
Interesting.
we named it the Blowhard Company.
Yeah.
In 2007, we sat around our deck in the backyard drinking a bottle of wine. So what shall we name this place? And then we said, let's build a company that XYZ. Well, what are we going to build a company for? We couldn't decide. We had a whole list of company values, and we decided on one. And that was, let's build a company where people want to come to work.
That's great. So I'm going to cut you off now because
Okay.
we're going to get going, but it's fascinating,
Oh, it is.
fascinating
Yeah,
stuff.
it really is. Yeah. Well, I'm
So-
glad to hear that, Wyatt. Congratulations. Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Thank your son-in-law.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be
Well,
nice.
you can meet him. You can meet him. He comes out, you know, with us all often. Yeah.
Well, I'll look forward to it.
Okay. I'll let him know.
I was thinking of the guest speaker programs. I mean, could have the volunteer fire department come as
By the way,
Right.
answer. I mean,
Right.
that would be excellent. My daughter is now the person who does online webinars or speaking about the program. So I'll tell her.
So I think we had mentioned earlier, possibly within the parentheses, just so we don't lose it, have CERT and the volunteer fire department. But I bet there's just topic. There's so many things that we could come in and have speakers. So bring that up. But so I think this is terrific, and it looks like that's what we've got for now. And really, I think we've pretty much taken all the time we need anyway. So I want to thank all of you for. Can we maybe stop sharing and?
Well,
Nancy,
hold
two
on,
quick
hold on.
matters, if I can.
Yes.
Just as an add-on, if anybody knows any grant writers, the fire department needs one, and email me. But also, there's a CPR class on December 7th, 1 hour. It's non-certified. We have a problem here in the district about survivability of heart attacks.
oh,
We're trying to train the public. So
Oh,
it's in the
great.
firehouse, 1 hour. It's a down and dirty CPR class.
where do we have our AEDs in Nescoin?
There's one in this firehouse, but that doesn't help you much because the AED has to be used within about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm trained in CPR because of my job.
Yeah.
Just curious. I know there's one at the golf course, but I didn't know where the other ones were.
Yep.
So that might be another grant proposal that somebody could do for having one at the store or having one in different public places. But anyway, we're getting far afield.
Are
So
we going to do
thank you.
surveys? Are we going to do surveys next time? Is it?
Oh,
I didn't get anything on surveys. I didn't
I
think.
did. I just sent it back to you, Michael. I didn't
Oh, you
know if
did?
you'd sent
Okay.
it to
Okay.
Tom.
I thought I sent it to everybody.
So
Right.
why don't we, if it's okay with you, why don't we talk about it next time?
Yeah, we'll do it next
So
time.
thank you for
Okay.
doing it. And I will
Um,
forward it. I sent it back to you with a few minor comments.
Yeah, they were minor. Yeah. But,
I mean, what do you guys want to do? We could talk surveys now, or we could
that's fine. No,
defer.
we've already been
Because
here.
I've
almost
got
2
it here
hours.
if you want it. Okay.
Okay.
I'll set it on to Tom.
Yeah,
I didn't know if you were gonna
let's do it
incorporate
next
the
time.
comments or
Yeah,
not.
well,
Okay.
well, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna make, first, this is a rough pass. Then we're gonna do a little bit smoother pass, and then we'll go top to bottom. So, we can add stuff, basically kind of in a raw form and refine it later. So,
Good point.
Okay.
I'll just add what it is I get, and I'll try to make a determination if it's a procedure or a policy and go from there.
That sounds great.
So, okay, so I will post R12 later today. I should point out that I do, now, if people object to this particular picture,
I like it.
I love it. I think it's great.
Mhm.
You are free to submit your own.
And thank you for doing that, Tom.
Yeah, awesome.
Very nice. Okay, and thank you for putting together this presentation, Tom, too, and thank you to everybody for doing your writing of all of these things. Wyatt, I will get back to you on your other 2 or 3 notes that I've got in front of me to review. And,
Okay.
and things are calming down a little in our household, I think. So hopefully during the next 3 weeks, we will get busy on all these different action items. Michael, we'll look forward to seeing 2 sets of minutes from you.
Yes,
And thank you for doing those. And then I think that's it. I don't know if you guys want to, if you have time, I think if you didn't attend the meeting, it might be worth looking at the video. It's likely to be on the community development webpage for Tillamook County for that first hour of the video where Sarah and this lawyer are going through what's going on with FEMA, just for your own information, not for the bylaws subcommittee, but just for your own information. It's quite interesting. And then maybe
And-
look at the last 20 minutes of it where they're talking about what solutions they're looking at. But
Nancy, do you
And
know
yeah.
if they'll post that link on the NCAC website to make it easy
um,
to find
I'll
it?
ask Gary to do that. I asked him to actually put the meeting notice up yesterday because I went in to try to put a link into the email for you guys, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I went into just the Tillamook County website. There's nothing on the calendar. I went into the County Board of Commissioners,
Wow.
Board of County Commissioners site. There was nothing on their calendar about it at all. I went into the Planning Commission web page. There was nothing. And I finally texted Sarah and said, where is the meeting still happening? Where is a link? And she sent it to me, and it was on the community development page. So I'm guessing, I don't know why it wasn't communicated a little more than that, but they still had good attendance. I looked like there were at least 50 people at the meeting, and then there were like 68 on the Teams call. But still, it shouldn't have been that hard to find. So yes, I will ask Gary to load that.
Interesting that we had a large percentage of that number on our own call locally. So
Yes.
obviously that the word did not get out.
Yeah.
And I think urgent meeting helped too, when they
Yeah.
sent out that email from NCAC.
Yeah.
So I know my neighbor doesn't usually dial in, and I ran into her at the Hawk last night, and she and her husband were like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
got
Yeah.
their attention.
Yeah, and it's really interesting since we were, Tom just joined us. Hi, Tom. It was really interesting that we, had such a discussion about whether an urgent meeting was even necessary. And here we had an example, first part of the year. So welcome, Tom Prahodich. I think you just joined us, correct? We're at public comment.
I did. Wow.
So it
What
turns
timing.
out, it
I
turns
had a-
out
I had
Sarah
a
did
big
not join
deadline.
us.
I had a big deadline this morning, and I just completed it. So
Okay.
I thought if I'm trying to get the video on,
There you are.
Michael,
yes.
for you.
Why don't you stop sharing, Tom,
I
unless you
hope-
wanted to go
I
through
hope
this?
I hope you understand. I'm kidding.
Yeah, of course you are, Tom. I've never taken you seriously.
Oh, that's fair enough.
Touche.
Well,
So
I do take you seriously.
Okay.
I was hoping Sarah would be on, and maybe you all
she ended up not being able to attend.
Okay.
She texted
One of the
throughout the
things that-
meeting.
One of the things I was going to suggest is that, and this isn't bylaws, but it's related to the meeting last night, which lasted 3 hours. I hadn't been there with Guy Sievert, who I drove there, and who's on the planning commission. He couldn't leave. I would have left an hour and a half into the meeting, but because it's sort of the patience of the commissioners and Sarah as people talked well past their 3 minutes was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I thought so too. And
some
just
of
to let
those-
you know, we did go over the meeting in some detail earlier
Okay.
today too. So, but feel free to comment
The one thing I was going to suggest that maybe Nancy, you could, since you've been communicating with Sarah, is that she send us her, the one page that dealt with option 4. If you don't have that, because that's the option that they're going to do on the FEMA thing, and which I didn't comment. I was only going to speak if Mark couldn't and be his designee, but I figured I better stay out of it. But I think that it's a very smart choice. That the lawyer they're working with knows what she's doing, and it's basically going to tell FEMA, no, we don't like any of your 3 choices, but here's what we're going to do, and we're right. And it wouldn't hurt for everybody to see what that is.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And
That's go ahead.
I
I'm
thought
sorry.
I thought she was very impressive, Molly. And that she talked, I'm sure you got it a lot more than I did, Tom, but she gave legal theory on what the what FEMA was basing their law on and their rules, and saying why that was wrong and why these others were right. And it sounded like at the very least, we were going to be able to delay things just through going through
Yeah.
the lawsuit, and possibly even be able to overturn it some. So
Yeah, what she basically said is that we'll do this. We'll say we're not going to select your 3 options, but here's what we're going to do. And FEMA will write a lot of nasty letters, and there'll be nasty letters that go back and forth, and but they won't do anything. And when they decide to do something, like they decide to suspend FEMA flood insurance, for example, for Tillamook County, that process itself takes a long time. And if you think you're on the wrong side of that argument, at any time you can bail and say, okay, we'll do one of these 3 things. But that's going to probably buy a year or 2 where we're not having to do crazy things. I mean, it's a mess. Sarah also explained last night that these mitigate, I don't know how much, if all of you have been keeping up with it that much, but if you do any kind of permitting that affects improved or unimproved real estate, you have to mitigate by providing essentially flood storage some other way on your property or in the reasonable vicinity. And as she explained, doing it on took 4 of the projects that they had recently permitted, and she said, if we applied this mitigation standard, they're all impossible. And even if you believe in protecting the environment, it's just crazy. But anyway, it was good, except that much of the comments were because people either hadn't listened to the lawyer or didn't understand what the lawyer said. Why are we doing this? Well, one reason.
well, and one guy went up and said, "What's FEMA?" I mean, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah, there's one guy that talked there. I was on the side of the room, and a few of them, after they got to their 5th or 6th minute, will say, I know I'm taking a lot of time. Can I take a little bit more time? And I was going, no.
Yeah, I heard you.
but Mary Faith and the other commissioners were not. But anyway, that was going to be my suggestion, is that they send us whatever they've got on option 4. It probably goes beyond. One of the things that came out of the meeting too is that although they haven't made a decision, the commissioners have not made a decision on doing option 4. The consensus is they're going to. And in the meantime, they've authorized Sarah and the lawyer to share with other counties and jurisdictions that are affected what they're thinking about, which apparently is what we're thinking about, the option 4, which apparently is other jurisdictions are thinking about too. But
And it sounded like a lot of the other jurisdictions are waiting until Tillamook County leadership on this.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting to hear. So yeah, and we went through a bunch of this. One of the things I was mentioning to Tom is that we were going to follow up with some letters. This is outside of our committee, but for the board to talk about, but follow up with that list of legislators to send letters to, and perhaps put individual letters up on the website for members to be able to send letters. But I kind of get the sense that we don't really need to have any kind of formal input to the November 27th meeting, because to me, I had the same conclusion you did, that they've already made up their minds and
Yeah.
they'll take the formal vote, but I don't think we would really add anything to
There
it
were-
unless
there were-
we were to have a letter that talked about the litigation a little more forcefully than we did in this letter. So,
Yeah, no, I think I think it's fine. I mean, basically what they wanted to hear, because they wanted to have buy-in from as many people in the community as they could, or at least Sarah did,
mhm,
that we would support litigation. And
mhm.
it's not litigation that the county is really paying for, or as I understand, not paying for at all. It's a consortium of jurisdictions, and it's being funded by donations. And even if that weren't the case and there were legal fees, if you have a lot of people as plaintiffs, it's going to significantly cut down any cost. But
And it sounded like they might look for some named plaintiffs in a, I don't know if this would be considered class action or not, but at least some plaintiffs to who would be extremely harmed individually by this decision, that they might be
well,
looking for some
I think
examples.
Tillamook County itself has standing,
Okay.
and probably any of the jurisdictions have standing because it's affecting them directly.
Mhm.
But yeah, sure, maybe. But anyway,
Yeah.
the other option, which I took coming from largely very conservative people, was don't do anything. Just tell them no. Basically, although by the end they seem to have agreed that you were telling them no if you came up with this other option, and followed it up with participating in litigation. But it was, there at one point I also said, is there no order here? I mean, people just started talking. And Mary Faith was right, I think. I mean, there's a lot of passion in the room, let people vent. But I wanted to go home.
Well, and when I was telling our subcommittee, I said, I think I would have run a tighter meeting, but on the other hand, I was impressed at how patient they were, and I felt like people felt heard with what they said at the end. But I can imagine you're sitting there knowing you had a long drive.
I went up to Sarah and Aaron Scar afterwards. They were together, and I said, I don't know how you all do this. I mean, I do know how they do it, but I have quite a bit of patience in what I do, but I don't have that kind of patience.
Yeah.
Well, here's a
Well, and I
pro
was,
tip. Here's a pro tip for watching the video, which I'm going to do is put it on 1.25 or 1.5 speed and use
Yeah.
the right arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the most important part, obviously, is the presentation by Sarah and
Yeah.
I think her
Molly.
name Molly, the lawyer. And some of the legal stuff is hard to follow. But basically, it's that FEMA is basing their authority on a statute that's not applicable, and an interpretation of the statute that's not applicable, and they're doing something they're making something like a regulation before they actually have made a decision. It's this pre-implementation stuff is not a decision. It's we need you to do this, and they may be doing it in part because they want jurisdictions to say no, because they're under pressure from environmental groups.
Yep.
And court order,
Mhm.
as importantly. But anyway, I've talked too much. That's all I was going to say. And I think I don't know what your jurisdiction is. Well, you're on the executive committee, and so
Executive board. We just had a
executive board,
discussion
excuse
about
me.
that.
Oh
Please.
no, yeah, community and committee.
Yes,
You're on
yes.
the
I talked
executive,
about that too.
you're on the executive board, and so you've been working on this, so you can approach Sarah and say, we'd sort of like some more information on option 4, including the slide that you showed, but anything you got beyond that. So that's my
I'll do that.
story.
Thank you. Thank you for all your help on the letter too. So
It
Tom
was,
and I appreciate
it
that.
was extremely minor.
Mhm.
Oh, no.
Oh, I do have a question. So you
Okay,
went
I'm
back,
just, before you go into the question, let me just say if there are no objections, we're going to extend the meeting for 5 minutes. Okay.
here's my question. What did you decide in looking at the last meeting about whether there were 70 people and how many people voted?
So we
We had a
talked about that extensively here. So why don't you and I talk about that offline? But
Okay.
I did look at all the numbers extensively. So why don't I talk to you about that offline?
Okay, I just want to know if I was right.
You were.
That's all I care.
You were. So,
Uh,
and that's why I don't know if you noticed, but in the final letter, we took the number out.
yeah,
Yeah.
at every one of these virtual meetings, I look periodically, more than periodically, because I'm obsessive compulsive, to see how many people are in the meeting. And I don't think I ever got above 63 or 64. I got your point, which is that there were some couples that were together, for example.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and repeat what we said earlier today. So I did look, and at times there were at least 78 that were
Oh,
in the meeting.
wow.
That were
Okay.
in the meeting, okay, that were, when we looked under participants, it said over 78. There were 92 registered. There were, at the time of the vote, I took screenshots. So I went back and counted, because when you take screenshots, sometimes there are duplicates on the third
Right.
page. So I
Right.
went through and actually put it into a spreadsheet. I spent some time on this, put the names all on a spreadsheet, and captured all of that. And it turned out there were 60 at the time of the vote that were present, but at there were only 7 or 8 cameras on. And of those, there were 2 sets of pairs. And like, I think Wyatt, you said both you and your wife were attending and
Right.
your camera wasn't on. So, conceivably there were more. And we talked about that in terms of our policies and procedures and voting, Tom, on how do we
Yeah.
handle that in the future to get more votes if there are multiple people with their cameras off. So we're right, it's pertinent for policies and procedures. But in terms of the vote themselves, there were 40 votes. So you were
Okay.
correct.
I thought there was less than 50.
Yeah.
But
So we just took it out.
yeah, no, I got
because
it. Well,
and we figured unanimous was the key here. So
I'm glad I brought it up to find out that you discussed what you do when there are 2 or 3 people on the same call, because
right.
they obviously can't, you can only, I've told people in the past that if something's really important and it's a couple, in order to vote, this is some time ago, before you had bylaws, the bylaws revisions, that you'd have to be on different devices.
Mhm.
Right.
But that really, that's not right. I mean, somehow you
Right.
have to be able, to tell us.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
So we actually have an action item. Wyatt and I are working together on an action item on how do we put that into policies and or procedures on how do we handle that, because we do have to handle it. And this delineated that, showed it,
Yeah.
how it was a very interesting exercise. And how do you handle it, and how do you write polling questions so you don't have 2 questions on one ballot, and and how do you make changes on the fly, and so there's a whole bunch around this Zoom voting stuff that we need to be able to clarify that came out with this.
Yeah, and
So
some you can see, your wife's name's Linda, right, Wyatt?
Yes.
And I noticed that Linda and Wyatt were there, but couldn't see them. And so, I mean, that's another example. I mean, if Vicky were with me and I didn't have or if Ann were with Tom won, and you didn't have the video on, you wouldn't know they were there, but they should be entitled to vote.
right, and Tom and Ann were both there separately, but
Yeah, no, I
there were a
know.
number, as I was going through, there were a number of people who had registered, but who only one was showing up on the screen. So you could kind of see if both of them registered, but they weren't 2 separate playing, that there were
Yeah.
probably two back there behind the, that with the
Right.
camera off. There was a good chance that there were two there, but you couldn't count on it. So anyway, we're working on that.
Yeah.
So thank you
Okay.
for bringing that one up too, Tom.
Well, you brought it up.
You were right.
Well,
Okay.
I just thought there were fewer than, I remember Gary counting, and there were about 60 at the time, and there were still, he'd only gotten into the 40s.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway,
So that was but earlier on, I think people left the meeting partway. So there were at least 78 showing at different times, because I was watching the participant totals pretty carefully during the meeting.
well, I was wrong about the 78.
Well,
So we're,
at least that's my memory, right? I don't have any proof of it. So thank you all for coming. Let me just go through our action items. We're going to continue. Tom's going to update the TPJ and R possibly, and the rest of us are going to continue on with our assignments, and we'll meet on. I hope all of you have a fabulous Thanksgiving, and we'll meet on Friday, December 6th for our final meeting of the year. Because we have postponed, or we have canceled December 20th meeting. So thank you all for everything. We've had a rousing meeting, and Tom, thank you for joining us at the end. and it's a great group. Love working with you all. Thank you.
and you're all here.
Yep.
Yes. Take care.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
going
you.
to
all.
stop the recording here.